Good morning. In case you are joining us now, you are most welcome. We'll start in the next 2-3 minutes. We are still ushering in participants. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Hesbon Nyakundi. I'll be the moderator for this session. As you're aware, this is the launch of the annual card online and mobile safety awareness campaign. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the guests who are on the call today. I'd like to begin by Dr. Habil Olaka, who is the CEO of the Kenya Bankers Association. Then we have members of the KBA Governing Council, bank CEOs, and representatives. We also have the country lead for Visa, Eva Ngigi Sawari. Thank you for joining us. And of course, we have Mr. Samson Waweru from the Kenya Society for the Blind. And we have Mr. Duncan Ondigo, who is joining us from the Retail Trade Association of Kenya, or RITRAC. And also we have Alice Kemunto from the Consumer Grassroots Association. We also like to acknowledge the presence of the members of the Fourth Estate or the media on the call today. Our sign interpreter today is Brenda. Be able to spotlight her on the screen so that the deaf community can also be able to follow. So our program is really going to be short. We'll begin with remarks from Dr. Habil Olaka, and then we will proceed to the Visa country lead, Ms. Eva Ngigi Sawari, who will also make her remarks, after which we'll have a small discussion on safety issues, in this period. And then that will be the end of our program. I want to remind you that we have a hashtag that you can use to share bytes from this session. We use Protect Your Money and Chonjo. So also those who are also not on the call can go to follow the conversation. The chat box is open. So if you have any comment, any question, you can be able to post it there. And then our guests will go to pick it from there. So at this moment, I would like to welcome KBS CEO, Dr. Habil Olaka, to make his remarks and formally open this session. Welcome, Dr. Olaka.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hesbon. Maybe let me start by first acknowledging the presence of members of the KBA Governing Council who are joining us online. We also have member bank CEOs of the KBA member banks and their representatives. I'd also like to acknowledge the Visa Kenya country lead, who is also with us, Eva Ngigi Sawari. I'd also like to recognize the CEO for the Retail Trade Association of Kenya, who is represented today by Duncan Ondigo. I'd also like to recognize the Kenya Society for the Blind chairman, who is with us, Mr. Samson Waweru. And then I'd also like to recognize the Executive Director for the Consumer Grassroots Association, Alice Kemunto, the CEO for the Association for the Physically Disabled of Kenya, Mr. Anthony Nzuki. I'd also like to recognize the members of the media, our various distinguished guests who have been invited onto the platform. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Indeed, I'm delighted to welcome you all to the launch of this year's 2022 Kenya Bankers Association Annual Card, Online and Mobile Safety Awareness Campaign, popularly known as Chonjo, or Be Alert, as it were. Today's launch marks the 10th anniversary of this campaign, which has for a decade now continued to empower consumers of financial services with information on secure use of card, online, and mobile transaction channels. Besides being the 10th anniversary of the card Chonjo, today's launch has another distinction. It falls within the same year that the Kenya Bankers Association is celebrating its 60th anniversary. KBA turns 60 on the 16th of July of this year. I think we deserve a clap. Thank you. That was heard loud and clear here at the studio. And considering these two unique distinctions, allow me to take stock of the journey KBA and partners in this initiative have traveled since 2012, when the first edition of this safety campaign went live. The past decade has presented what can be described as a continuum of security challenges. The period has also seen an unprecedented pace of innovation, particularly within the payments and financial services sector. In the banking sector, the adoption of technology has remained an effective avenue of enhancing operational efficiency and customer service experience. At the inception of this campaign in 2012, ATM card skimming was a persistent challenge in card-based transactions. In 2014, we observed a remarkable decline in this type of fraud with the adoption of the chip and PIN technology. The additional security features of this new technology was a game changer in card security, enabling customers to make safe transactions through merchants' websites and point-of-sale terminals in Kenya and globally. In the years after 2014, however, fraud trends have evolved in sync with the dynamics of the payment landscape. After the drop in card-related fraud, fraudsters transitioned to mobile money and internet platforms. In the past 8 years, cases of social engineering and identity theft within the platforms have persisted. Similarly, incidences of phishing emails, malware attacks, and baiting have scaled up in tandem with the increased uptake of internet banking and payment services since 2020 with the outbreak of the COVID-19. As such, the greatest security challenges we face today largely target internet and mobile channels. Recent innovations in the card-based payments have also seen security breaches consisting of theft of passwords and PINs at ATM lobbies and merchant transaction platforms. While most of the previous security challenges, such as card skimming, could be addressed through innovations such as the chip and PIN technology, the bulk of the emerging threats call for consumer education on ways of navigating fraudsters' traps. This year's campaign theme, Fraud Mitigation Through Consumer Awareness, therefore seeks to shift more focus towards these persisting challenges. As stakeholders in this effort, we are firmly convinced that consumer awareness is the most efficient and effective defense in the war on fraud. I have no doubt that through collaborations between and amongst the stakeholders, through initiatives such as the Chonjo program, we can make a great contribution towards addressing most of the emerging security issues. Indeed, such collaborations bode well with efforts being made by stakeholders within the payments, and financial services sector towards securing financial inclusion. It is the ambition of the banking industry through KBA to continue spurring growth in the economy through inclusive innovation. The Kenya Bankers Association and the banking industry by extension will continue to adopt a holistic approach to cybersecurity by developing partnerships to tackle this challenge. This year's partnership attests to the fact that stakeholders in the financial services and payment sectors can come together to create awareness geared towards addressing these emerging problems. In closing, I would like to take this opportunity to extend appreciation to our member banks for ardently supporting this initiative. I would like to particularly single out the bank's communication teams, which continue to do a great job in co-creating and circulating these safety messages. Finally, I would like to extend appreciation to our partners, the card service provider, Visa, the Association of Microfinance Institutions, AMFI, Consumer Grassroots Association of Kenya, the Retail Trade Association of Kenya, RETRAC, the Kenya Society for the Blind, the Association of the Physically Disabled of Kenya, APDK, and last but not least, our very own PesaLink. We gratefully acknowledge our consistent collaboration over the years, which has without doubt continued to make great contribution towards mitigating fraud within the financial and payment system. With these few remarks, ladies and gentlemen, it's now my pleasure to declare the 2022 Chonjo campaign officially launched. Asanteni sana.
Thank you so much, Habil, for those remarks. I think at some point you wanted us to clap, but I think we are an online platform, so I can tell participants we can clap like this in sign language. That's how we cheer someone up. So you just wave your hands, Mr. Owero, up. Yeah, that's just just like that. That's how we cheer somebody up. So thank you so much for those remarks. I think the highlight there for me was that you took us through the journey since the time Chonjo came, and also through the scale of challenges that have evolved over the years. And I think there you also highlighted the importance of collaboration and also educating the public or the users of financial services towards containing the fraud. So thank you so much. So I want to encourage attendees at this point that we have a hashtag. We are active on social media. You can use Protect Your Money, or you can use Chonjo to engage, share your views, ask any questions you have on on security matters. Also, our chat box is open. You can post your reactions there, your comments, and so on. So at this point, I would like to welcome the Visa country lead, Ms. Eva Ngigi Sarwadi, to also make her remarks. Welcome, Eva.
Thank you, Hesbon. Dr. Habil Olaka, the KBA Governing Council, member bank CEOs, my fellow panelists, media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am delighted to be addressing you this morning as we kick off the safety campaign with the Kenya Bankers Association once more. Customer safety is key for us at Visa because without our customers knowing that safety of their data and money is guaranteed, we will be unable to continue building a robust digital payments ecosystem and financially including the population. That is why we are always looking to ensure that we play our role in educating customers on the best way to stay safe as they transact using their Visa cards, both online and offline. We have seen growth in the uptake of digital payments and e-commerce occasioned by the pandemic, and we expect that to continue. According to the data from the Central Bank of Kenya, the number of transactions made via cards stood at 5.7 million in February 2022, compared to 4.13 million in April 2022, into April 2021, when the pandemic was setting in. Additionally, during the period January to November 2021, mobile money transactions hit a 10-year record high, with users transacting 6.246 trillion, a 38% jump compared to the corresponding period in 2020. E-commerce has also experienced growth recently as more merchants look to reach customers without them having to physically visit their shops. Today in Kenya, it is possible for you to shop for your groceries, clothes, and other household items via the internet. That is unlike before when a customer would have to make the journey to a supermarket or mall to make these purchases. You'll be interested to know that Kenya is the 54th largest market globally for e-commerce with a revenue of over $2 billion in 2021. That goes to show that there's great confidence in digital payments, even though cash still remains the preferred mode of transacting among many Kenyans. We have also seen a keen interest across the ecosystem to support the continued uptake of digital payments. We recently saw the Central Bank of Kenya launch the National Payment Strategy for 2022 to 2025 to better regulate the ecosystem for the benefit of all those involved. At Visa, we are focused on making the payment experience seamless, safe, and secure for all customers to provide them with a desirable experience that allows them to support the growth of our merchants, both big and small, in a frictionless manner. We believe that over the coming month and campaign, we will be able to take great steps in educating more customers on how to stay safe during this partnership. We believe that over the coming month and campaign, we'll be able to take great steps in educating more customers on how to stay safe through this partnership with KBA. Cyber attacks, including phishing attacks, have been on the rise as more criminals prey on unwitting members of the public to make a quick buck off them. However, with education and tips being provided as part of this safety campaign, more customers will be better equipped to combat these attempts. The reinforcement of safety tips will be key for this. For example, reminding customers that Visa or any other bank for that matter will never call requesting you to share your card or account details with them will help reduce the instances of customers exposing their details over the phone. Additionally, reminding customers to be aware of fake websites by always confirming that the site they're using to access banking services is genuine. Customers should also remember that fraudulent websites do not have a padlock and HTTPS extension in the URL web address on the top left of the screen. In closing, I am sure that our combined efforts will go a long way in promoting the security of the digital payments ecosystem and encourage more customers to adopt digital payments as they integrate in the formal financial ecosystem. We look forward to our continued collaboration to bring more individuals into the financial ecosystem. Thank you, and congratulations to KBA on this 10-year anniversary of the Security Awareness Campaign.
Thank you so much, Eva, for those remarks, and also for emphasizing the importance of educating the public. I think also you've gone an extra mile in sharing with us some of the tips based on emerging trends in fraud, and also sharing a commitment of the card service providers to continue, making payments across their platforms seamless. So thank you very much. And at this point, I would like to move to the next section of our program. We are going to have a very small discussion, but very, very important. I have a panel here. We have Mr. Duncan Ondigo representing the Retail Trade Association, representing the CEO, Wambui Mbarire. And then we also have Mr. Samson Waweru from the Kenya Society for the Blind on the call. We also have Mr. Fidelis Muya, who is the Technical Services Director for KBA in that panel. And we also have Alice Kemunto in that panel. So welcome you all to this discussion. Maybe I can begin with you, Duncan. I think we've heard from our speakers there. We've heard from Dr. Ulaka and Eva Gigi Sawari that we've seen an upsurge in digital payments. I don't know whether you have any insights from a retailer's perspective, or specifically on the importance of awareness or boosting awareness among consumers as a leveraging point to containing fraud, especially from a retailer's perspective. And also, as you talk on that, you can also give us some updates in terms of whether there are the efforts or how retailers have actually harnessed technology during this period to be able to create convenience for their clients through collaborations with various stakeholders who include merchants and payments service providers. So welcome, Duncan.
All right, thank you, Esbon, and good morning, everybody. Congratulate Kenya Bankers on the 10-year anniversary of
Yeah, I think we are having a
all
small
the best on their 60th anniversary. Can you hear me?
Duncan, we're having a small challenge with your connection. So I think as you set it up, we can quickly shift to Fidelis, then we can come back to you in a moment. But Fidelis, we wanted to ask you to maybe give us some insights from a banker's perspective, because you are a banker, you are an expert, a security expert. What fraud trends do you see from a banking perspective in the payments and financial services sector? And what strategies are stakeholders industry taking to contain these emerging security threats?
Thank you very much, Esbon. You're right in that fraud has become a very prevalent situation in the current past, especially with the move to the digital environment, mostly accelerated by the COVID situation. It is estimated about 60% of the consumers are actually now engaging with the digital environment to transact their business, and the fraud normally tends to follow these patterns as well. So we've seen a shift in the frauds towards targeting the digital environment in basically all of them, all the channels that consumers are involved in. The frauds have also started to follow the money as well. So in the card environment, we used to have the PIN, and as Dr. Habilo Olaka mentioned, the efforts we put in the PIN and chip largely stopped that. But we still see a lot of transactions, especially online transactions, card not present transactions, mostly through the internet. And therefore, we are still struggling to fix that particular loophole. We are looking at enhancing a bit more the exposure of PINs by investing in contactless payments, so that consumers do not have to give their PINs at places, especially for small transactions that are normally not really value for the PIN. So we will see a push towards adopting contactless to reduce the occasions of consumers having to give their PINs. On the mobile phones, the biggest frauds we see in this place is normally SIM swaps, where consumers are having their SIMs changed by fraudsters. And so in partnership with MNOs, what we've done is established a facility where now whenever a SIM is changed, the bank is alerted that this SIM has been changed, and then the opportunity to contact the customer and validate that indeed it was a genuine SIM change is availed to the bank. And if it is not genuine, then they basically contact the consumer and hopefully block the transactions until they can validate the SIM afresh. So we will expect to see a major reduction in the SIM swap fraud because of that. On the same issue of SIMs, you noticed quite a number of SIMs used to be sold in the streets. In fact, they used to be hawked in the streets. The MNOs have tightened the procedures for issuing SIMs, and therefore now only registered agents and bona fide agents are issuing SIMs, and we don't expect to see people selling SIMs on the streets. They physically have to go to an agent and register, and that will close the avenue for the availability of SIMs to the fraudsters, and we hope to then reduce, again, the availability. On the internet banking platform, we have seen quite a number of people who transact online, and the opportunities for frauds have also arise, especially in situations where most of the websites cannot be validated. So what the banks have done is to put what we are calling multiple factor authentications, so that you don't just give your details and confirm the sale on the internet alone. There is a second channel of confirming the same. So for example, banks can send you a one-time password, which you are sent to a different mobile number or to your SMS, or to an email. Then you have the ability to confirm the payment. If it is not you, then obviously the password doesn't get to the fraudster, and therefore it basically frustrates the transaction. So we will see again, hopefully, a reduction on the incidences of successful fraud when we implement, or all of us implement, that particular feature. Social engineering has become a very big one, especially where now consumers are being targeted by fraudsters. This is in particular because now the devices are being held in the consumer's hands, and therefore the technology is within the control of the consumer. So the fraudster now looks to target to the consumer to get the consumer to divulge their details. And therefore we are looking at alerting the consumers to be aware not to divulge their details, not to give out things like sensitive information, not just PINs, passwords, birth dates, and any personal information, because that is what is used to create what we call identity fraud. So if we can frustrate consumers from, or rather stop consumers from giving those details, then they can frustrate any impersonation attempts by fraudsters over this particular scam. The next one is basically emails, where people are receiving phishing emails. Normally, we want consumers to be alert that these special offers that look very nice deals, especially from websites and email addresses that are not familiar or unknown to them, we need to basically discourage them from clicking on those and not opening any attachments that come from emails that they don't know. You could get a consumer getting a special offer from a company they've never transacted in, or somebody contacting them that they have a stash of money sitting somewhere. And if you only let me use your bank account to store the money, then we can split the cash. Those are normally attempts to gain account information and then basically access the consumer's accounts. So we are trying to educate the consumers to only interact on emails with customers that they know and email addresses that they validate and they know they are dealing with. So in closing, we want to ensure that the consumers stay alert. And as a banking industry, we normally keep updating the information that we disseminate to consumers to ensure that they stay on top of their use on electronic devices. Because like we mentioned, the device is now becoming the interacting tool between the bank or the financial service provider or the payment service provider and the system. So the consumers are the first line of defense in fraud, and if we can keep them updated, then they can be a very strong first defense to ensure that we maintain fraud at very low levels, if not eradicate them. Thank you very much, Hesbon, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Fidelis. I think that you've highlighted various initiatives, really broad spectrum of initiatives being undertaken by the banking industry to contain fraud. I think the highlight I got from your comments is that the consumer is the first line of defense in containing fraud. I think that's a good point for me to bring in back Mr. Duncan Ondigo from Retrack. Duncan, are there any, what in your view are some of the efforts that the retail sector is making towards creating awareness among consumers? And also you can speak, with regard to how retailers have harnessed technology to be able to create convenience for their clients, and also to be able to, forge collaborations with various stakeholders towards containing fraud within the consumers within the retail sector.
All right, I hope you can hear me clearly now.
Yes, please proceed.
Yeah, so just to start off, I can say that from a retail perspective, both the retailers and the consumers are more aware about the threat of fraud. Available research shows that for retailers, e-commerce fraud is actually at the top of the agenda. So it comes to the prioritization of where they see the fraud aspects being addressed. They are prioritizing e-commerce and digital online fraud even more. The research also shows that at least 88% of consumers are aware of the need for them to be more to be more observant about the way they carry out their transactions online. However, in terms of how the retail sector is addressing this, of course, the whole aspect of fraud is taken as a holistic approach, which means that online fraud, the retail sector is unique in the sense that it has various aspects of fraud that it has to deal with. So online fraud is just one of them, and that means that the other aspects of fraud, like supply fraud and in-store fraud, are also taken within the whole aspect of fraud and risk management. So in addition to taking the fraud as a holistic management approach, of course, there is the aspect of training employees, making sure that everybody is aware of the implications of fraud, reducing what they call false declines through collaboration with partners such as payment providers and bankers, because once you reduce those false declines, then you also eliminate the possibility of other instances of fraud. Then, of course, Fidelis talked about customer authentication. The retailers have introduced much more stringent customer authentication measures, and you'll notice that technology has been deployed so that there is seamless connection, for instance, between the mobile payment systems and the banking back-end system, so that, for instance, when there is a transaction carried out through a mobile money payment, it is debited instantly at the point of sale. Back to you, Hesbon.
Thank you, Duncan. I think you've given us a very broad perspective on what the retail sector is doing. I think you've highlighted there, the other aspects of fraud that the retail sector is trying to address beyond, the online fraud trends. And I think at this point I can bring in Mr. Samson Waweru, who's the chair of the Kenya Society for the Blind. Waweru, you represent a very important constituency of consumers, the blind community and also the persons with disabilities. I want to hear from you, from your perspective, in terms of why is the awareness important in regards to supporting people with disabilities to access safe financial services, and what, in your view, because you are the user of these platforms, what should be done by stakeholders to be able to support persons with disabilities to access these services independently and safely?
Thank you very much, Mr. Hesbon. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, please proceed.
Yes, I want to first and foremost congratulate the Kenya Bankers Association for running this campaign for 10 years. It's not easy. We appreciate you for the fact that you even brought on board persons with disabilities, and we regard ourselves as being held high in the digital and financial inclusion that the Kenya Bankers Association is conducting. So I wish first and foremost to state that it is very important to create awareness among the community of persons with disabilities. One, because we've come from far in terms of how we were treated, especially with matters of finances. We were looked at as nobodies, as poor people, because most of the time disability and poverty are synonymous. But through awareness, this narrative is changing, because currently you can look around you, you know at least a person with disability who is well educated and who is working, and people who are doing well. So you will also realize that disability arises from barriers that are both environmental and attitudinal. Attitudinal meaning they emanate from ourselves and our perspectives and our perceptions of people with disabilities. Because most of the time we want to feel and believe we can imagine and think for people with disabilities rather than asking them what their preference is, and especially on sensitive matters to do with finances. I really want to thank banks because they have tried to embrace disabilities by even allowing persons with disabilities, persons who are blind, to have ATMs or Visa cards without telling them that if you cannot sign with a pen, you won't get an ATM. I think that is something that is making good progress, and we need to appreciate that because more and more consumers with disabilities will want to have access to Visa cards. We want to have access to mobile banking and internet banking services, because technology has come in handy to ensure that the person who has a disability has a way to be independent, and especially for the visual impairment, where we have technology that talks back to us. And when it talks back to us, you also cannot hear what it says. It talks back to us when even our screens are on dark mode. My screen can be off, but I'm transacting and no one will ever know. So when this kind of awareness is created, policy makers and decision makers in the bank are able to avoid discriminating persons who have disability because of the belief that if they give them access to certain services, they will be prone to fraud. I think lastly, I would like to underscore some trends that we've seen in the retail market that appear to be dangerous. You will all note that we have been using some Visa machines in petrol stations, in supermarkets that have the QWERTY keyboard, where the card is put in there and the amount is put in, and then you're told put in your PIN. Where now I'm a blind person, I can comfortably put my 4-digit PIN on that QWERTY keyboard because I know the buttons. I know where 5 is, and with that I know where other buttons are. Now there is this new one that is coming that is touch screen. And it's been quite embarrassing when you go to the supermarkets and to the petrol stations, and you hear that thing brought to you, and then you touch, it is all a screen, and you cannot know where this number is. So that thing is dangerous because it's taking us to the days where you have to tell someone your PIN, because now you won't know how to put your 4-digit PIN, which is your secret. So I would like to request that the CEO of the Visa Kenya is here, Madam Sawari, look into that and ensure that if it's not coming with accessibility features for those who cannot see, maybe it's not time to have that kind of gadget in the market. We can learn from the Western world what they're doing about it, but we can also do more and ensure that persons with disabilities are included. Let's use the 4 main universal principles of accessibility as we design our products and services in the financial sector that persons with disabilities will require. Let's make sure that these gadgets and devices are perceivable, that someone without this sense can use other senses to perceive and use the same product. Let's make sure they're operable, meaning they're easy to use, they're understandable, someone can use it from this step to the other, and let's make sure they are robust so that we can make sure we protect everyone from fraud, including persons with disabilities. And we want to say thank you for this opportunity to participate in this edition of the Chonjo campaign, and wish you well in this whole edition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Waweru, for your comments there. I think you've also retraced for us the journey from where access for financial services for persons with disability has come from, and also highlighting there some policy interventions that have happened during the period. And I think you've also mentioned some accessibility challenges you've observed. I think the card service providers will to take that up and be able to ensure that the platforms are also accessible. As we draw to a close of our discussion, I would like to rope in Alice Kemunto, who is the Executive Director of the Consumer Grassroots Association of Kenya. Alice, I would like to invite you to comment from a consumer perspective. What are some of the ideas or strategies that can be rolled out by stakeholders to address some of these security issues?
Thank you so much. Thank you, KBA, for this opportunity. And I hope I can be heard well. Maybe Nyakundi can confirm that.
Yes, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. I want to appreciate KBA for once again considering to work with Consumer Grassroots Association. I want to congratulate you for your anniversary and also for the good work that you're doing for the sake of consumers, because all we are talking about are consumers. This year, in March 15th this year, we celebrated the World Consumer Rights Day, and the theme was Fair Digital Finance. And it's really going hand in hand with this year's theme from KBA, that's fraud mitigation through consumer awareness. And when we were celebrating or marking the day, we realized that the service providers are disturbed or stressed a lot because of the fraud cases that are increasing by day. And seemingly, fraudsters are really thinking ahead of every other stakeholder. For this reason, as consumers, we are the most affected lot when it comes to digital banking, when it comes to digital transactions. With this in mind, I would like to highlight a few challenges that we are facing as consumers and also as consumer lobby groups. The first of the top among all is data privacy and also security. That is a challenge because the data that is stored by the banking sector somehow gets out of hand into the hands of the fraudsters, and they use it against consumers. There's fraud and identity theft that has been taking place over and over again, and we've been receiving complaints as an organization on the same, and forwarding it to the relevant banking institutions as they come. The level of literacy is another challenge that we are finding on our end, because even when they come with complaints, you realize indeed that this consumer doesn't know how to operate or how to carry out a digital transaction. And this now we're posing this challenge back to you as Kenya Bankers Association, and also as the stakeholders, individual banks, and also Visa, I've seen you here, to take up this role very seriously. We may not eradicate all the problems, but if educating a consumer can be given a priority, I believe that half of the problems, half of the issues that we have about fraud will be solved. If we can purpose to focus on each consumer. You know, banks have done enough. When you go to banking halls, you'll find that there are so many screens around, which is good. They have also tried their best to send direct messages to consumers. It's also good. But it's also equally important to purpose to educate consumers, and especially now that the COVID, the pandemic restrictions have been lifted, it's good to take advantage of this, go direct to consumers, get to know what they are going through, and get to know how best they can be helped so that they don't fall prey to these fraudsters. When our friend was highlighting the security challenges in the banking sector and what you have done to mitigate the fraud cases in the banking sector, I was looking at it and I'm asking myself, where are these people, in which planet are fraudsters living? Are they living with us or they are from another planet? And we came to realize that these are people that we have within our circles, we have in our banking sectors, we have in our families, and we ought to do something so that we can reduce the cases. And because much has been said, and I wouldn't like really to repeat on what most of the stakeholders have mentioned, I would like to go straight to what we can do to ensure that that has been handled well and consumers will be a happy lot. One, as I've said, we need to have a sustainable consumer education, sustainable, not a one-off thing, not something to do just because you are doing it to be seen, but let it be a structured way of consumer education. And I want to request humbly Kenya Bankers Association to take up this role, because individual banks, and they're listening to me, the representatives are here, are more focusing on how they can get as many customers, many consumers, and how they can maximize on the profits. Yes, they are teaching, they are training consumers. Yes, they are reaching out to consumers, but if Kenya Bankers Association can dedicate education, can dedicate this activity, be part of the major activity in your planning, in your strategy, I believe it will yield more results so that you can boost what individual banks are doing. The second thing that we would wish to see from the sector is that we need to have a robust or a simplified complaint management system, because many consumers who have been affected, they find it hard to complain, and the same being handled. You find they're twisted from end to end. The only consumers or constituency that is a bit lucky are those ones that are using social media platforms. But remember that many consumers are not on social media platforms, so they may not be able to complain when they're affected. So can banks led by Kenya Bankers Association come up with a simplified platform where all consumers, that cuts across, where all consumers can raise their complaints, and they will be handled from that point. I know you have the customer care, and not every consumer also may be able to go into the branch to launch the complaint. If we can have an online system that is simplified for every consumer, I think that will augur well with us. The banks also would like to encourage you to invest more on strict on your infrastructure, so that when we as consumers are logging in, let it not be easy for us to access information or to get more information from you. The two-factor verification, I think, will come in handy to protect us as consumers, because I'll not be able I can't access, or I cannot transact if I don't verify my details. So it's important for that to be made a mandatory so that consumers can be protected. The other thing that as consumers we have realized is that ordinarily, there's this saying that they say that Kenyans have a very special place in heaven when it comes to innovation, yeah? And this innovation comes a long way also to affect consumers because they are very innovative when it comes also to fraud. Ordinarily, our Kenyan law is very strict for someone who steals a chicken or a goat in the village. But when it comes to those who are tampering with our data, the data privacy, and also those who are stealing millions online, it's like the law is not really very strict on them. So we are calling on the Kenya Bankers Association to collaborate with other stakeholders. We are here as Consumer Grassroots Association to push for strict regulations that in the event people are found with these criminal activities, there will be stiffer penalties on them. Let it be stiffer as that of robbery with violence. If we can get that, then I think it will also reduce the number of people or criminals that will be doing this kind of criminal activities online. And last but not least, Kenya Bankers Association, you've done a very good job, but we need also more from you or from individual banks or from other sectors of fintech. We want our own homegrown solutions. We know that this problem is global, but we need our own homegrown solutions. But this cannot happen if we don't have data. And the best way to do this is to do research. We want our own research. We carry out our own research. We want to know how much we have been affected through this kind of criminal activities, how much the economy has been hurt from fraud activities, and how best we can do together with other stakeholders, like the government as the biggest stakeholder, to come up with rules and regulations to ensure that this is reduced to a negligible figure. And doing this, I believe we can mitigate this a lot and ensure that consumers are safe. Finally, banks are usually slow when it comes to investing in infrastructure that are going to protect the consumer even more, because once those people are caught in those activities, the penalties are not as stiff as the banks or individual banks could think, or Kenya Bankers Association or the sector could think of. So we are calling on government to purposely focus on this sector and ensure that they have assured the sector of their security and their safety, so that even when they invest, they know that the investment is worth. So whoever that is in this call and is representing government, just ensure that you take up this responsibility and ensure that the sector has been assured of their safety and consumers will feel very safe. For those few remarks, I want to thank you once more. We are here to support you. We are here to work with you, and we are here to ensure that we take this to another level. Doing this for 10 years, it's not easy, but we believe that together we can do even more. Thank you so much. Thank you, KBA. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. I think you've highlighted various aspects there. And I think I need to highlight the fact that banks are also participants in this campaign. So they are actually the co-creators of the tips we're going to share. And also they are taking a very active role in circulating the campaign messages. I think you also highlighted a few aspects to do with issues like authentication and so on. I don't know whether Fidelis, you have any comment you want to add broadly on, because I think she raised issues on authentication, which I think could be an issue of awareness. I know the features could be there, but then the consumers are not aware that actually they can have those layers of protection.
Yes, as she was talking, I was taking very, very many notes because she has actually left a very big plate on our table after this session. I think we'll have a very busy time trying to address some of the things. But you're right. The thing with these kind of messages is not to have it as a monthly thing. We need to keep these messages because ordinarily the campaign needs to be reinforced the whole year round, because if you tell somebody something once, they remember it for maybe 2 or 3 days, and then they will still need reminders. So the idea is to get the bank communication teams to keep reinforcing the messages so that these messages become sort of, these habits are then formed after repeated repetitions of these actions. Of course, there is the communication gap where you are saying consumers don't understand the features that banks have put in. So that is good feedback. We'll take it back to our product teams to ensure that we can either simplify the messages further to ensure everybody gets it, or include a lot more training sessions for the consumers to ensure that they receive the proper messages to use the systems effectively. So yes, I would at this moment say we have been given some challenges, and you will see that reflected in the next campaign when we update our messages. Thank you.
Thank you, Fidelis. I think at this point now, I'd like to thank our panelists. I'd like to thank Duncan Ondigo from ReTrack. I would like to thank Mr. Samson Waveru from Kenya Society for the Blind, and also Alice Kemunto from the Consumer Grassroots Association, as well as Fidelis Muya, who is the Technical Services Director here at KBA. Thank you very much. Now we move to the next part of our program because I see we are running over time. I think we have a few questions here in the chat box. We have one question from Elizabeth Kibuba, who is asking how much in estimates did the banking sector lose to fraud in 2021? I don't know whether Fidelis, you want to check that. Do we have any numbers?
Unfortunately not. We don't have the current numbers, especially for 2021. We don't have those. We are still in the process of getting returns out of members. So unfortunately, no, not at this point.
Thank you. So you can keep your questions coming and your feedback as we draw to a close of our program. As we go on, I don't know, Habil, whether you have any comments to make, even as we go on with our program.
Yeah, thank you, Hesbon. I was actually trying to look at the questions that were coming in as well as we continue with the discussion, and I saw an interesting one from Christine Jaggi asking everyone, and her question is on urging KBA to work closely with CBK to eliminate checks as modes of payment, and she's comparing to other markets like in South Africa, where this has been effectively done and eliminated, frauds that are generally perpetrated through the checks. And that's a very spot-on suggestion, something that we have been, talking about for quite some bit of time. If you look at, initially, you could pass through the clearinghouse any amount of check. Now, then we came up with what we call value capping. And the whole idea behind value capping was to address that problem of frauds that were, being perpetrated through the clearing system. Now, so it was value capped to 1 million. And I can see the proposal is for us to eliminate it completely, but maybe we might possibly meet at some middle ground. We continue reducing the amount that can be channeled through the clearinghouse, that's using checks, until a point where you find that most of the transactions are now being channeled through the other modes of payment. And it's at that point that you can possibly consider eliminating the checks all together. I think the checks still play an important part, and our fear is that by eliminating them, you're going to knock out a segment of consumers who currently only have checks as their modes of payment. I don't know if that responds to Christine's question, but that is the thinking that we have.
Thank you, Habil. We have a response here from Rosemary, who says, KBA, thanks again, congratulations on anniversary. Thank you so much. We also have a question here from Boniface. I think it's Boniface, who's saying card frauds are successfully and easily executed through online payments. This is because most of the online payments and international money transfer services are done simply using payments and international money transfers are done simply by using the card numbers. Once a fraudster is in possession of your card or simply views a card number on the card, you are done. Kindly provide a solution. Don't know whether you have any comment there, Eva. Then we can come to Abel or Fidelis.
Sure, happy to take that. Boniface, thank you for that question. As I've mentioned, and you're right, e-commerce is obviously a key part of how we transact, post-pandemic, and that's bound to continue. And with that understanding, then the continued provision of technology that supports or protects consumers when they're transacting online has really been our priority. So we've got I'd speak to three broad points on how we protect consumers who are transacting online. One is providing our issuers or your banks with the right technology to support with the authentication or authorization process. So we've got risk tools that are able to detect fraudulent merchant sites, that are able to provide risk scores to a transaction. So by the time the transaction is being forwarded for authorization, before completion, then that transaction is fully diagnosed, if I can use that word. The second one is 3D secure, what you commonly know as OTP or the one-time password. Again, that's technology that's meant to help with the additional level of authentication of a transaction. So yes, you have your 16-digit number. Yes, you've got the number at the back of the card, what we call the CVM. What we call the 3-digit PIN that you use to authenticate that transaction. That is then secured at an extra level through that one-time password that is then sent through a separate channel. So even in the unlikely event that your card is made vulnerable on a merchant site, then you're still protected by that additional layer. And lastly, which is really the silver bullet to all of this, is a technology called tokenization. So we've been working with merchants to adopt this technology, and the adoption is really at a very high rate right now, where PAN details or the 16-digit number details are then replaced by a number that is, to some extent, not useful to any hacker should they have access to that. So merchants who store, these details on their sites, in a case where, their site is made vulnerable, then, the card details are never accessed. And I think lastly, what I would say is whenever we, as we work with our partners, we always make sure, that, they are adhering to certain standards, and especially in situations where they're recording or they're storing cardholder information, and that security standard is meant to protect. So there's multiple standards adopted, multiple technologies in place, and and the continued improvement of that technology to ensure that you're protected, whether you're transacting online or face to face.
Thank you, Eva, for that response. I think we can take one more question. I don't know the Fidelis, you can take this one. This question, just a moment, is from Dunstan Malema, who is asking, is there a bank that has been able to incorporate predictive model on fraud analysis? And if so, they can share how they do it. Delis, are you there? Yeah, so I think as we think we are running over time, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for joining the call today. I'd like to thank members of the KBA Governing Council on the call, KB member bank CEOs who are on the call, and also bank representatives from the communication teams and other departments who are on the call today. Thank you so much for joining the call today and for your continued support. I'd also like to thank Visa, and represented here by Eva Sarwari. They actually are our headline sponsors for this year. Thank you so much for the support. I'd like to thank Samson Waweru from the Kenya Society for the Blind for the continued collaboration. Retrack, represented here by Duncan Ondigo. Thank you so much for providing us with opportunities to circulate the messages and extend the reach of the campaign messages, through your retail networks. We really appreciate that partnership. And also the Consumer Grassroots Association, which has really been a very, very good partner in terms of circulating the campaign messages. We'd also like to thank the members of the media who have continued to support this initiative by highlighting these messages. And that collaboration really has gone a long way in reaching the message to a broad range of consumers. So this year, the campaign partners are the Visa, we have Consumer Grassroots Association, PesaLink, Retrack, Kenya Society for the Blind, Association of Microfinance Institutions, and APDK, which stands for Association for the Physically Disabled of Kenya. We'd like to urge you to continue the conversation online, even as we end our online event. So you can follow or make a comment under the hashtag Protect Your Money or Chonjo, and keep the conversation going across platforms. So I'd like to thank you all and wish you